welcome back to the Me, Myself, and Hopefully You podcast. My name is Tariq, a 19-year-old university student who currently has no idea as to what I want to do with my life. And so rather than seeing a careers advisor, I decided to start a podcast in the hopes of meeting some people who could help me out, maybe with their amazing stories, or maybe they've got some knowledge to pass on to me. And by doing that, by learning more from them, hopefully I can learn a bit more about myself too and create some amazing stories as well. So if you're interested, or maybe you just want to see where I end up, then don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the new podcasts out every week on Sunday. That was an awful intro. We're going to keep it in, right? We're going to keep it in because that's what this podcast is all about. It's all about me learning and pretending to know what I'm doing. Speaking of pretending to know what I'm doing, we spend at least 13 years of our life in school, in formal education. We learn about the quadratic formula. We learn about Pythagoras' theorem. We learn how to not burn ourselves with a Bunsen burner. But do we learn about taxes? No. Do we learn about what all those fancy words on our payslips mean? Definitely not. Do we learn how to buy a house? Hell to the no, right? But that's what this podcast as an episode is all about. Because today, ladies and gentlemen, I sit with someone who isn't, old. I'm not gonna lie, she isn't old, but she knows what she's doing. Right? She's just recently bought a house. She's been Instagramming and blogging for many, many years. I will leave that in the description below, and she talks more about the issues that we should have probably learned in school and how we can adult properly. That's why the title of this episode is what it is, Adulting 101, the things they should have taught us in school. So without further ado, my guest at this time, Katy Stephenson. I want to start off with some quick fire questions for you.
Right.
Just to tell you a bit more, right? So the first quick fire question I want to ask you is, what's the last picture on your camera roll?
Oh, this is why I needed my phone.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. It's a video I took of Pepper last night. Toby gave her the custard pot to lick out, and it's just her face covered in custard, basically.
Oh,
that's quite a good last picture, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a good one. Some people just have boring ones, but that's a good one. That's a good
no,
one.
that is a good one. Yeah, she's got custard all around her face, and she's like licking.
Bless her. The second quick fire question is, who would you say, or who would you consider as your role model in life?
Oh, role model. I'd say so two. So Victoria from In the Fro, who's a blogger. I followed her blog for years and years. She's a huge role model. And the second one at the moment, just because I'm following her a lot on LinkedIn, is Katy Stephenson, who is the managing director of Social Chain UK. She puts a lot of content up on LinkedIn, and she's really cool, and I like what she stands for. I'm going to say those two. And my mum.
Oh, okay. Mum number one, though, yeah?
Yeah, obviously, if you're listening, Mum.
I hope you are listening.
Yeah.
To be fair, you might get some value out of this podcast episode, because you might not know she might not know some of these things.
Yeah.
We'll be going through some of the sort of topics and questions that young people have before they become an adult and basically enter the world of work and buying a house and what have you, and going through all the different terminologies that people like to use to confuse us. So before I do that, though, could you just introduce yourself quickly, Katy, to the audience?
Yeah, so my name's Katy. I'm a blogger, and in the day I'm a marketing manager. I've set up my blog about 9 years ago. It'll be 9 years ago next month I set up my first blog, which was a lifestyle blog. It started focused on fashion and beauty and that sort of thing. And then sort of as time has gone on and I've transitioned a little bit into more of an adult, I started up Grown Ups Club, which I started last year, because basically I just spotted a gap where there wasn't anyone really talking about the stuff that people needed to know about, which I experienced a lot when we bought a house a couple of years ago. I was like, oh my God, where's all this information? So that's why I started that. And yeah, I'm just a blogger, marketing manager. I do a lot of social media, still run my own Instagram, and starting up freelancing as well. So yeah, I'm quite busy.
I know, yeah, it sounds, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you started the blog?
I was 15 or 16. It was when I was doing my GCSE revision.
Wow.
So yeah, 16, got to be 16, I think.
Yeah, if you're doing GCSE,
Yeah.
you'd be 15, 16, yeah.
Yeah.
Why,
So
why did you start it? Just cause?
I just wanted to procrastinate.
I
I was reading a lot of
this podcast.
yeah, don't worry, we've all been there. Yeah, I just read a lot of blogs and I really enjoyed it. And so then I started it because I was like, oh, I don't really want to do whatever revision I was doing. And then I just really enjoyed it. And it sort of then became my creative outlet. So I then found as time went on that if I was ever getting really stressed or something like that, it would often be because I wasn't writing on my blog. So then it sort of helped me out a lot. But yeah, 9 years. I can't believe it's been that long.
Congratulations. Next year will be the Big 10.
I know. God,
crazy.
have a party.
I know, yeah, have a 10-year party.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you mentioned there that you sort of started Grown Ups blog when you bought your house, and during that process you were going a bit crazy about what all these things mean. So I mean, what I think the question for me to you is when you were buying the house, what were some of those questions, and could you answer them for us?
It was just like tips, like just general tips that you don't think about. I mean, when you're buying a house, you sort of you know the gist. You know that there's a mortgage advisor involved, there's a solicitor, you know you need to get a mortgage before you can progress. But there was loads of other little things I didn't know about, like reservation deposits and at what point you'd get the money from your Help to Buy ISA, things like that. And I think it was those sorts of things that I was Googling, and it was really hard to find information. And we actually bought a shared ownership house. And so with anything under the Help to Buy scheme, there's even less information out there. And obviously that's something that more and more people are going to be using because more and more people want to get on the property ladder. So yeah, it was just Googling bits and bobs really. So that's why I started doing sort of posts on questions to ask when you're viewing houses, top tips for first time buyers, tips when you're buying a new build, how to make your home feel like more cozy once you're in there, just loads of little things like that, because that's what I wanted to know about. And that's where Grown Ups Club sort of came in, because at first I was just blogging about it on my personal blog, and then it got to last August, I think it was, and I was like, actually no, I think there's enough content here and enough things to talk about for it to be its own sort of entity, which was when Grown Ups Club was then born, or it was originally called Millennial Adulting 101, but that's very long, so I changed it. But yeah, it was just random bits and bobs, like tips, how to save, what the process was. Oh my God, I had no idea what the actual sort of like a flow chart of the process was. So that's something I've sort of created and put on my Instagram. It's just lots of little things, and right now off the top of my head it's so hard to think of them all, but they just come to me at different points throughout the day, or like my friends will text me and ask me something, I'm like, oh my God, I completely forgot we had to do that, and then that will give me an idea for a blog post, because there's so much. And once you're in the process, it sounds silly, it's quite a simple process. It's not rocket science buying a house, it really isn't, but it's just having that understanding to help you through. And obviously, I mean, we were very lucky that we had both my parents and Toby's parents to sort of offer advice. But even so, they bought houses a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then. And the content out on the internet isn't necessarily always up to date, and it's not always written in the sort of the language and the terminology that you'd find it easy to read. Like, I like simplifying things, because some of these long words and acronyms, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what that means, because simply it is just this or that. But yeah, sorry, that's a very long-winded answer. But yeah,
No,
just lots of different things.
no, it's perfect, because I mean that's why I love your you hit the nail on the head right at the end there, especially because that's why I love your Instagram account, because your Instagram account contains like just some basic information there, and I know you've started doing videos with other accounts as well, which they're nice, short and snappy, and they just get to the point.
Yeah.
You know, as someone who tries to like sort of, you know, I want to be as ahead of the curve as possible, because I know how, you know, valuable that is to be ahead of the curve. And so I want to know more about, well, what do I need to do now so I can buy a house in the future, and all that other stuff, and what sort of jargon do I need to know? And your Instagram does it perfectly, and your blog as well. It does it
Thank
perfectly
you.
to sort of explain these things. So I mean, as someone who is 19 years old, I can tell you, I'm sure you've already been told, but you're doing a very good job with that. It is very, very helpful.
Thanks, Tarek.
I'm sure you get told that all the time, so I'm sure it doesn't really matter. But I want to start off with that, with buying the house, right? Because you mentioned that you just didn't even know the process. Essentially, you didn't have some sort of approach. So let's say you're buying a house right now. You wanted to buy a house. You didn't know what house you were going to buy. What's the first step that you go through?
So the first thing I always say is, unless you've got a decent amount of money saved, there is absolutely no point in looking. Do not go on Rightmove. Do not look in your local estate agent's window, because you will you're just killing yourself. Like, I've been there. I did it when I only had a little bit saved, and I thought, oh, I'll just have a look. But then you're like, I mean, it might be helpful because you might see it and then it might drive you to save more. But if you actually think you're ready to buy and you're looking, but you haven't got the money, it's just pointless. But let's say you do have a decent amount of money, you go on Rightmove, or you look in a little magazine or whatever, and you find a house. So the first thing you'll then do is call them up or book an appointment. So I emailed the estate agent and just said, we'd really like to come and view this house. Is it possible? So they booked in a viewing. We then had the viewing. There was a little bit of competition for this house, so we had to be quick. And in our case, we put down a reservation deposit. So it's 500 quid, which we were then going to get back when we paid the actual deposit on the house. But it basically just starts from there. It's like I said just a minute ago, it's not rocket science. Like, it is simple, because then you just follow sort of the order. You find a mortgage advisor, find a mortgage, you send off your documents, you find a solicitor. It's really easy steps. The thing that's difficult and confusing is keeping track of everything and chasing people up, because, oh my God, chasing up solicitors is one of life's hardest, most frustrating things. But once you're underway and you're on the process, it is quite easy to follow. And it's just, I think a lot of it is to do with doing your own research as well. Google is literally number one, or Grown Ups Club, whichever way you want to look at it. But we had to Google a lot and ask a lot of questions to people, like to our solicitors. I was always that person in school. I'd ask questions and people would think that I was really stupid. They'd be like, oh my God, Katie, we just want to go to lunch, why are you asking another question? But I'm not embarrassed by it. And I was asking solicitors questions. I'd literally write a document and just attach it and be like, can you answer all these questions? Because at the end of the day, and I think I've said this on someone else's podcast before, you're not buying a new pair of jeans, you're not buying a pair of trainers, you're buying a house or a flat. You're buying some sort of property, and you need to be 100% sure on what you're doing. And if that means spending half an hour writing out questions, then do it. I think it's not something to be rushed, even though it is a simple process. But I think you need to do as much as you can to learn about what's what, and not to feel embarrassed if there's an acronym or a word that you don't know what it means. Even now, I don't know what some of them mean. Like when I'm doing my jargon busters, and then I come by words and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I forgot about that, and Google it and I'm like, oh, that's what it means. So yeah, I think, yeah, it's a simple process, but you need to help yourself and you need to ask questions, you need to Google it, and you just need to start by saving money. That's where everything comes from.
So that first step, right? You mentioned about booking an appointment with the real estate agent and sort of putting down a reservation deposit.
Yeah.
Where does the sort of and then you mentioned things like mortgage advisors and solicitors.
Yeah.
And do those people, do you individually message them, or do they sometimes come as a group, or how's that?
It really depends. Also, that you've just reminded me, in that step, you need to have a decision in principle before you go and see the house. I shouldn't have forgotten that. So that is basically, you go to the bank, whatever bank, it doesn't have to be your bank. You go to the bank and you say, this is how much I earn, and this is how much I spend. My incomings and outgoings, basically, but only for the official stuff. So if you finance a car or you pay rent, the important stuff, basically. Okay. You give that information to them and they will put it all into the system, and it will come out with a figure, which is how much they would loan you for your mortgage. So it doesn't have to be set in stone, because a lot can change between the time you get your agreement in principle and your actual mortgage. But it's basically just to get a letter from the bank. So when you go and view the house, you say, I can do it. I can get money from the bank, because otherwise you're wasting their time, basically. And they might look at you and say, there's no way, they're going to be buying this house. Like, they look too young, or blah, blah, blah. So it's really important you get that. You don't need to have it. I've got friends who went and viewed their houses without one. You don't need it, but it's good to show that you're serious about it. Because if we didn't have that when we viewed our property and we were in competition with the other couple who were looking here, if we didn't have that, they might have said, there's no way they're getting that. They haven't even got a decision in principle. So I'm saying decision in principle and agreement in principle, but they're the same thing. Okay. Or mortgage in principle, they're all the same thing. But if we didn't have that, they might have thought, nah, there's no way they're affording that house. And then the other people could have got in there first to put down their reservation deposit. So you need that. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that before. This is what I mean. Even with me, things just sort of come into my head. I'm like, oh no, you need that. But yeah, and that is literally, it's simple. You can do it online. And also something to remember is you don't have to go with the people, with the bank who gave you your decision in principle. You don't have to go with them for your mortgage. So we got ours from Nationwide, just because that's who I bank with. We got the decision in principle. We went and viewed the house. We put a reservation deposit down. But then actually, when we came around to getting our mortgage, we ended up with Halifax. But it doesn't matter. You're not sort of tied into a contract or anything with the bank or the lender who give you your decision in principle.
So I've got two questions from that. The first one, and I know it's going to sound like a stupid question, could you tell me or define to me in as basic terms as possible what a mortgage is? What classifies a mortgage? And the second one, just before you go into that one, does the amount you get, so how you said you got your decision in principle from Nationwide, but then you went to Halifax.
Yeah.
Does the amount you get differ per bank, or is it pretty much? Okay.
Okay, so a mortgage in basic terms is a big loan you get from the bank for you to buy your house with. So when you buy a house, you put down a deposit. So that deposit is all your money you have saved up, or, if you get money from your parents or whatever, that is your deposit that you put down. The rest of the value of the house is made up with the mortgage. Okay, so say you were buying a £200,000 house and you put down £50,000 as a deposit, which would be quite hefty deposit. I mean, anyone who can do that, fair play, go for it. And then you have the rest of the money, so that £150,000 would be a mortgage. And then with a mortgage, you pay it back every month. And you can have, there's so much to say about it. You can have, you pay interest on it as well. So for example, we've been paying our mortgage for almost 2.5 years, and the amount of interest you have to pay, like, we've barely paid off any of the mortgage, but that's just life. That's money, that's interest rates. So you need a mortgage to buy a house, basically, unless you had a lot of money and you could just buy a house, outright. So that's what a mortgage is. And then there's lots of different aspects to a mortgage that make it easier, harder. You have a mortgage term. So that is how long you have that mortgage for. So ours, I think, is either 25 or 30 years, something like that. And there's lots of things you can sort of play around with to increase or decrease your mortgage. If you're older, you might struggle to get a mortgage. So if you're in your 50s, you might struggle to get a mortgage. Obviously, if you don't earn a lot of money, you'll struggle to get a mortgage. There's lots of different things. So that's what a mortgage is. It's basically a big loan to get a house, to get a property.
Is it a fancy word for a loan then?
Yeah, literally. It's like a property loan. That's
Right.
what a mortgage is. And then what was your second question, Tarek? Sorry.
It's all right. Does it differ? So from the agreement in principle, does it?
Yeah. So that's why you don't have to have a mortgage advisor. You could do your research yourself and go on, I don't know, compare the market or something online and find your own mortgage, or you can get a mortgage advisor who will work their socks off, basically, or they should do, to get you the best mortgage possible with the lowest interest rate and the lowest monthly cost, things like that. So yeah, it varies from bank to bank. When we bought, Halifax was the best one for first time buyers, but I know that could have changed. My friend at the moment, I think he's going with Santander. Like, there's loads and loads of different ones. I think pretty sure all banks probably offer different mortgages, and there's other lenders out there as well that aren't like official banks who lend mortgages. So that's where it's helpful to have a mortgage advisor, because you can basically just give them all the information and then they'll go and find you a mortgage. Or they might come back and say, you need to be earning another £2,000 a year on your salary to get this mortgage. Is there any chance we could up the deposit instead? Could you put some more money towards that, so then we can get you a mortgage, so we can get you the house? So that's where a mortgage advisor is handy. But then, just to confuse things even more, I don't think you necessarily need a mortgage advisor. I regret paying the money we did for our mortgage advisor, because I think we could have done the research ourselves. It's really dependent on the person. Like, it's so different for everyone what they want to do.
If you don't mind me asking, how much do people roughly pay for a mortgage advisor?
I think we paid £500, and it was one through Which, like the Which question mark, and they do lots of like reviews and stuff like that. I think it was £499, I think we paid through them. But then I've got friends who paid a lot more. And then I also have friends who got a free one. They bought their house at a similar time to us, and they had a free mortgage advisor. And then I've got people who I've read reviews on the internet and stuff like that, and blog posts, who didn't pay for one at all and did it all themselves. It's really, really varied. But I think if you're spending that amount of money on a house, you need to make sure that you're getting the best deal possible. So actually, maybe you do want a mortgage advisor. I think for us, it's just in hindsight, we wish we hadn't done that. But maybe that's because our mortgage advisor wasn't the best one. I don't know.
But hindsight is a beautiful thing. Like when you said the amount of money you spent, I thought, oh, you must have spent a lot. And obviously, £500 is a lot of money. But
it's not huge amounts. Yeah.
In the grand
when you're putting down a house deposit, yeah,
it's like I obviously you're the expert here, but if I was in that position, I'd go, you know what, I'd rather spend the 500 on this guy. One, it's, I guess, less stress for me and less time wasting, and I can focus on something else. And two, he is the expert. He probably knows what he's doing. He probably could get me something better. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it's £500. At least I know what I could have got.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's so different for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's what people want. People just want the one route to buying a house.
I know it would make life so much easier, wouldn't it?
They should just what real estate agents should do, right? Or what real estate agencies should do is they should be like, right, there's this house, we can buy this house for you. We'll give, oh, actually, no, you go to a real estate agent. You don't even have a house, right? You go to them and you go, this is the amount we got, this, blah, blah, blah. You put in the information and they give you a package of, you got your mortgage advisor, you've got your whatever, you've got all of them. And then they basically give you them and you just basically buy a house off that, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to speak to anyone else. You don't need to get into contact with anyone else. Just make things simple.
It would make life so much easier. I think you have to be organized when you're buying a house, when you're going through that process. Fortunately, I'm very, very organized person, and I have lists and folders and notebooks and everything. I love it. And you really need to be like that, because when you've got emails coming in from your estate agent, your solicitor, your mortgage advisor, you know, loads of different places, Help to Buy, you might have put a question in on a forum and then you're getting emails back from that, like with people responding. There's a lot to keep up with, and there is a lot of paperwork involved. And I will just say now, this is everything I say on this podcast is just is my personal experience. It's not official advice, but you don't have to read through every single document ever. And that is coming from me. I'm really anal about stuff like this. But when you get like all the solicitor's searches through, you don't have to read it all, really.
It's like terms and conditions, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to read through all of it, and I reckon I would have spent probably about 4 hours reading it. And Dad was like, look, Katie, it's fine. You don't have to read through all that. The solicitor's job, the reason you're paying them is for them to say, yeah, this is all good. You don't have to go through and read it. That's why you've just paid them that amount of money. But there is a lot of organisation involved, and having all your bank statements and your pay slips and all of that sort of stuff together as well.
So, okay. So this, to carry on the sort of buying the house that we're buying, right? Most people these days, especially young people, have a Help to Buy. Okay.
Yeah.
Before actually we carry on our buying our imaginary house,
the
Help to Buy, how does that actually work?
So what, the Help to Buy scheme or the Help to Buy ISA? The Help to Buy scheme.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's different areas of it. So I think the actual Help to Buy is where, say we were buying a house and we put in a 10% deposit, and then the government would put in a 15% deposit as well, and then you'd only get the mortgage for 75%. Then obviously the government would have 15% equity in your house. So when you came to sell it, they'd take their 15% out, whether the price had gone up or down. But that's one way of getting a lower mortgage, basically. And then the other way, which is what we did, is shared ownership. So you buy a percentage of the house, basically. So you could buy 50% of the house, and then the housing association will buy. So the housing association is different to the government. The housing association basically own the houses before you buy a share of it. So they will then buy the other 50% and you pay rent to them. So for example, every month we pay X amount for our mortgage for the percentage that we own of the house. And then we pay X amount for rent, which goes to the housing association. So it sounds, at first, when you say shared ownership, it sounds like you've bought a house with someone else, but it's not that. The house is entirely yours. You can do whatever you want to it, as long as it's not a structural change. And if you did want to change the structure, all you do is write a letter to them and say, we'd like to build an extension, we'd like to build a conservatory, we'd like to knock a wall down in the house, and they go, yep, okay, cool. But that's a really affordable way. I've done like a pros and cons on my Instagram before, I'm sure of it, of shared ownership, but that's another way of getting on the property ladder. I mean, the government are putting these schemes out for a reason, like they want to help people get on the property ladder, and that is the best way to invest your money, even if it is shared ownership, or you know, you can't buy a whole house or whatever you're doing. It's the best place to put your money, really. because it's not depreciating in value unless something dreadful obviously happens to the housing market. But yeah, I recommend to anyone who's looking at buying a house to look at Help to Buy, definitely.
So what's the difference between what the Help to Buy scheme and then the Help to Buy ISA?
So the Help to Buy ISA, they love to make it confusing, don't they?
I thought they were both the same thing.
No, yeah. So the Help to Buy ISA doesn't exist well, it does exist anymore. Okay, so wait, let me make this simple. So the Help to Buy ISA is basically you can put up to £200 a month into this ISA, and the government will give you a 25% bonus on what you have saved by the point of you withdrawing the money. The problem with the Help to Buy ISA is that the property, the price threshold outside of London is, I think it's £250,000, and inside London it's £450,000. And the maximum bonus you can get is £3,000, which, I mean, that's still great. If you can get £3,000 off the government, which I'll make it clear now, it's not a loan, you do just get that money, you don't have to pay it back. That's great. But the problem we had, and this is something that everyone needs to learn, is you do need to read the small print, because I had a Help to Buy ISA that I was putting money into, and when it came around to us buying the house, because the price of the house is over 250 grand, I couldn't get the money. Shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, but I was like,
you can say whatever you want.
Shit.
Yeah.
I was like, I've factored this money into my budget and now I haven't got it. And it's fine. I got so basically, in my opinion, there's too many limitations to a Help to Buy ISA, which is why I'd recommend a lifetime ISA. So it's really easy to set up. You just do it in the same way, and you can actually have both set up. So then you can transfer your money from your Help to Buy ISA into your lifetime ISA. With a lifetime ISA, it's so hard to keep saying that word. You can basically, Elisa, you can deposit more money into it. So you can actually deposit, I think it's £4,000 a year into it per tax year. You can claim much more money. I think the maximum you can get from the government is like 33 grand if you opened it from like your 18th birthday and you deposited all the way to your 49th or whatever it is. And the property threshold is 450 grand. So there's a lot more flexibility in terms of the bonus you can get. And I really recommend doing it. So if you haven't got one set up already, but you know you want to buy a house at some point, whether that's in 2 years' time or 5 years or 10 years or whatever, I really recommend setting that up. The only thing you do need to remember is if you are going to be buying a house within a year, do not do it, because you have to have it set up for 12 months. So even if you're sat here and you've got a load of money in your Help to Buy ISA and you think, oh no, a lifetime ISA sounds much better, if you're looking to buy within a year, don't do it, because you won't get any money and then you would have really shot yourself in the foot.
But with the lifetime ISA, I'm probably getting it confused with something else. Well, is it that you can't take the money out unless it's for a house?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only thing with the Help to Buy ISA. I keep saying like Help Time ISA. With the Help to Buy and the lifetime ISA, you shouldn't take it out. You get charged. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think for lifetime it's 25% of the amount you're taking potentially, but don't quote me on that. You have to go and Google it yourself, because I can't remember all the figures off the top of my head. The point of it is, and also with the lifetime ISA, you can take it out for retirement, I think, if you're over 60, or if you have a terminal illness. They're the 3 reasons you can take the money out. So basically, if it was me, I'd set one up and I'd just deposit a little bit in there. If you're you, for example, if you're a student and you're like, oh, I do want to buy a house one day, but the money I have right now, I'd sort of want to put either into my education or accommodation, or, you know, just save in so when I get out, emergency fund, whatever. But you could put literally £20 in a month, and then it will all add up. Or even if you don't put anything in a month, like just setting one up is so important. I mean, even my brother, he's not going to be buying a house anytime soon, and I keep going on at him just to put a little bit of money in while he can, because you're getting 25% of that money from the government, and that is free money. And I don't think anyone should sort of
Never turn down free money.
like, no, exactly. Like, why would you? And it's from the government. Like, come on, take that money. So yeah, I really recommend doing that. If you have a Help to Buy ISA, I'd switch to a lifetime ISA. That's what I would do if I was buying a house right now, or if I was waiting to buy a house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the expert, but my sort of little input there would be set up a direct debit from your main account to the lifetime ISA. I put in £10 a week. I've been doing that for, you know, roughly, which is literally nothing when you think about it. £10 a week. I spend £10 a week on Greg's, so put £10 a week. You know, it is nothing in the grand scheme of things. Put £10 a week. That's like 40 quid in a month. That's 520 quid in a year. You just put it in there, and the best thing about the Lisa or Lysa or whatever is you're not tempted to take it out. With the Help to Buy, I know people that have actually gone into their Help to Buy because they just want to spend the money.
Don't do it.
With the lifetime ISA, you will not do it because you're losing a significant amount of money if you do it. It's just not worth it. So 100% definitely agree with what you're saying there, which I'm sure you already know because you're the expert. The next part, right? So we've got the Help to Buy covered, right? So in our buying this imaginary house of ours, where are we? So have we got the mortgage? Did we say that we've got the mortgage yet? So,
no, we've I don't think we've got the mortgage yet, have we? Or have we?
No, because we've only had the
reservation deposit. You put the deposit down, so you're basically saying we want to reserve this plot, and then you receive the brain is ticking memorandum of sale, so the MOS.
That is big.
It's basically a letter to say you've bought this house. It's almost like a receipt sort of thing.
Why not just call it a receipt then?
I know, they don't make it easy.
Stupid.
So you get that. So it's basically saying congratulations. Well, it's not even saying that. It's basically saying you've bought this plot, basically. And just so things are a little bit more serious. So you've got like an official statement. And then from that point, you are looking at what we've done. We've got MOS. I feel like I've revised for a test. I think you're at that point, you're then looking at mortgage advisors, because nothing is concrete until you get the keys in your hand, to be perfectly honest. That's another little nugget of advice. But yeah, you're then looking at getting mortgage advisor, and then you're looking at solicitors as well, which, I mean, all I can recommend is just look at Google reviews. You're then applying for your mortgage, which is obviously done through your mortgage advisor. And then it's the wait. And the wait is the worst part, because you're just waiting to hear back from the solicitor about the searches and stuff like that. You're waiting to hear back about whether you got your mortgage or not. And for some people, I mean, obviously at the minute, things take a lot longer with what's going on. Things take a lot longer. But yeah, no, you're just waiting. That is it. And oh my God, it kills you, because you're chasing up, this is what I said earlier, you're chasing up solicitors and they're like, no, not heard anything. And I'm sure if you're buying, if you're in a chain as well. So we were lucky, we bought a new build house. There was no one living in here before. We weren't selling because we were both living with our parents. So we were like easy peasy basically to just move in. But and that will be the case for a lot of first-time buyers who are obviously buying a new build property. But if you're selling your house and then you're buying a house which someone is in, which they're selling to buy another house, you can see how confusing it gets. And that's where solicitors have to talk to other solicitors and talk to them, and it all just gets very confusing. But then once the wait is over, they'll say, yeah, congrats, you've got your mortgage. That's when everything comes a little bit more serious. You'll then receive the reports back from your solicitors to say, you know, they've done checks around like the land and the property, and I can't even remember all of the reports they do. And then you have an exchange date. No, you don't. Yes, you do. You have an exchange date, and then you have a completion date. I think that's right. Exchange, then completion, and then you're in. So the last sort of part of it, that's the very long, boring part, because at least at the beginning you're like, oh yeah, I get to go and view the house, and you're getting all excited, and you're looking at furniture and stuff like that. But then once you start, you know, actually dealing with the mortgage advisor and the solicitors, that's where you're like, oh my god, no, I'm not going to look at furniture, because you become very doubtful when you're not hearing back from people. You're like, well, was there something wrong with our pay slips? You know, can we not get the mortgage we thought we could get? And your brain starts sort of running away with all these ideas, and you become very, very doubtful, which is why I would say, just remember, the house is not yours until you have those keys in your hand and you are opening the front door. That house is not your house. And that's really difficult to get your head around, because you invest so much time and money into the process. But it's really important to sort of stay grounded and remember that.
You know, when you go into a new build, is it completely empty?
Yeah. So you could go into the show home, which will have furniture in there, so it looks like a house. And those ones you can actually buy with the furniture. Obviously, they're a lot more expensive, but you can buy them with the furniture, or you just go and it's completely empty. So when we came into our one, obviously there was no furniture, nothing anywhere. There weren't even like mirrors up in the bathroom. You know, the what's it called? Why has my brain gone numb? Like the cupboard, airing cupboard, that's the one, hasn't got shelves in. The whole house is completely empty. But then, you know, between the point of view viewing it and buying it, they might have added stuff into it by then. It sort of just depends on when you view it. That reminded me, I was going to say something else about, oh, it's going to come back to me in a minute. What was I going to say? No, it's lost me. Yeah, you can buy show home. I can't remember. It'll come back to me in a minute.
Feel free to pop it in whenever. So that's buying a house, right? And I feel like that was that's something that everyone sort of, especially young people, sort of dream of doing. And it seems overwhelming, especially with how expensive houses are. And the whole process seems overwhelming with it. That comes with it. Another thing that seems to come with becoming an adult is taxes. Okay, and payslips, right? Another thing that I'm sure everyone looks forward to. So we'll start off with I guess your payslip, because I know people that are like 25 that can't explain to me things that are on the payslip.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, I've not a clue, Tarek. You're gonna have to ask someone else. Right? Which is another reason why I wanted to get you on. So the payslip, what are some of the things that when you look at, I know you've got one up.
Yeah, I've just got my payslip up.
I mean, you don't have to tell me the figure that's at the bottom if you want to. Feel free. But what are some of the things that are on there that just sort of you would say are things that most people just overlook or just don't know what they are?
Okay, so first thing, obviously, you have your salary, and nowadays, which obviously we never used to have, is furlough. So, for example, I'm furloughed 2 days a week. Some people will just be furloughed, so that's all that will come up. So that's a new sort of row on there now that we didn't have before. You have, so obviously deductions, you have your PAYE tax, which is pay as you earn tax. So that's sort of the model that if you're employed by a company, most of us will be on, unless you're self-employed. and your national insurance, which national insurance goes towards like NHS, some like benefits and allowances. I think state pensions as well might be done through national insurance. You have, this is sort of like what I'm about to say now is the more important bit. So you have your gross pay, which is your full amount of pay before you pay any tax or anything on it. So that is what you would have earned this month if we didn't have to pay tax or national insurance, which would obviously be amazing. So that's gross pay. You then have your tax paid, which obviously speaks for itself. Your national insurance speaks for itself. Your pension. So if you pay into a pension, you'll pay a certain percentage a month into that, which, I mean, it could be like 20 quid. It just depends. And then you have your employer national insurance, which is what they pay. So their national insurance they pay for you, and your employer pension, which is the pension that the money they contribute into your pension. What else have we got on the pay slip?
The employer ones, do they come out of what you earn, or they're completely separate to yours?
It's separate. It's fine. It doesn't come out of what you earn. It's just what they pay. But yeah, and then so everything that I've just said then is what you get for this period. So the month or whatever your period is of what you've earned, and then it will say it for the tax year as well. So because this is my pay slip for this first tax year from April, all the figures are exactly the same. But then, you know, by next March, those figures would have inflated, obviously, as we've gone through the rest of the tax year. But yeah, that's what a pay slip is. It's always handy as well, just to keep an eye on your tax code. At the moment, for anyone listening, if you've had to work from home even one day because of COVID in the last sort of year or so, you can actually claim tax relief on £6 a week, I think it is, which it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but like as we said earlier, free money, like
Free
don't
money, man.
turn your nose up at it. It literally takes a couple of minutes to do. You can just literally Google claim tax relief, like 2021 or whatever, because you can do it for last tax year and this tax year. Obviously, it depends on how much you've worked. If you've been furloughed, then obviously you're not really going to get a lot of money. But if you're listening and you've had to do that, I recommend doing it because free money. Love it.
Exactly. So staying on the topic of taxes, which I'm sure you're very passionate about.
I hate taxes.
I don't know anyone that says they love them.
Yeah, true. Apart from the tax man.
So far in the podcast, you've mentioned two terms, right, that I feel like really resonate with me because I really struggle with them. So I never found out what a tax code was, even though I had 3 separate jobs beforehand. Until about a year ago, didn't have a clue what a tax code was. And I remember because it came up that my tax code had changed, and I was there like, what the hell is a tax code? And I'm there looking it up, and I'm so confused. I'm like, why am I getting taxed? I'm not earning that enough to be getting taxed. I know that for a fact, right? So I'm so confused. And then I had to have a conversation with HMR, and HMRC just take the piss. It takes a million.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's the worst thing in the world, right? To completely go off topic, right? I waited till 8 o'clock, which is when they open. 8 o'clock. I got up at 7:50 to check the thing, and I waited exactly at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, refreshed the thing on the website, already busy, can't get through. How are they busy at 8 o'clock? I don't understand.
I know. I tell you what, whenever something goes wrong in the office and someone has to call HMRC, they now just sit upstairs in like the solo office upstairs because no one wants to sit and listen to hold music for like 45 minutes.
Oh man, it is.
It's such a pain in the ass. I mean, they're very helpful, but
oh yeah, they are. When I first called them, right, they were she was such a nice person. She was like, yeah, no, it's all right. Yeah, we'll fix up the mistakes, finish. But you can never get through to them, and I don't understand why no one has ever. Why has no political party ever said, right, number one priority, we're sorting out HMRC because it's ridiculous.
They'd get all the votes.
They would, because it's so hard to vote.
Yeah.
angers me because I've actually had to recently call them again and I've not been able to get through to them yet. It's just frustrating. So yeah, tax code, right? How would you define what a tax code is?
So a tax code will basically define how much you get taxed. Simply, that is it. So like the number before is sort of the threshold where you don't have to pay tax. So since I claimed the tax relief on the £6 a week that I just mentioned, my tax code has changed because they're like, right, we need to up it by however much money for you to get the money back, if that makes sense. So I think it's normally like, what is it, 12, I think it's normally 12.50, which means you get tax, you don't get tax on the first 12,500. I think that's what it is. And then the letter at the end is it's not tax bracket, I think it's sort of like the level of tax that you pay. So mine's an L, which basically means it's just like basic, just like standard tax. But I don't know huge amounts about tax codes. It's something that I'm going to do a post on, because a lot of the posts I do for myself to learn as well. So that's one of those ones where it would probably take me quite a while because I want to learn more about it. But a tax code it's just always worth keeping your eye on, because if it changes, then you're going to have to call it or email or whatever HMRC and get it sorted, because it basically determines how much money you are paying.
So I've had obviously because of lockdown, I've had a few friends that have basically gotten new jobs, especially when we first went into lockdown, and they were earning a lot more because they were doing more hours because they weren't going to school. And they were seeing that they were getting taxed. Now, I remember when they told me, I was like, you're not earning enough to get in taxed. If you get taxed and you're not earning enough, do you have to call HMRC, or will it at the end of the year automatically do it?
Yeah, so you'll get a rebate. So sometimes it can work the other way. If you don't pay enough tax, you get a bill saying, excuse me, you owe us however much money in tax. But normally for a lot of younger people, if you've got a part-time job or you're not really doing many hours, you'll get a rebate. So you basically, I can't remember how it works because it was quite a long time ago that I got a rebate, but I think you just wait until the tax year ends and it either sorts itself out and you wait for it, or you have to call them. But that's actually reminded me something that I always do. If you're working in a part-time job or a full-time job, but you're paid hourly, write down your hours. You need to keep track of your hours yourself, because you can't always rely on your employer to do that. Particularly if you're working in pubs and stuff like that, or if you're working with people that you just don't trust, keep track. It's really, really helpful, and actually for you as well, to sort of look back on how much you've earned. So I recommend doing that, because then if you need to cross-reference it with anything, you can say, well, actually, no, I did a 6-hour shift that day, not a 10-hour shift, and I've been overpaid, which has taken me into the next tax, over the tax threshold or anything like that. Keep track of your hours.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that, even especially for like if you're working for a small business, which it might just be one owner, and one, they might be dodgy, or two, they might have just made an honest mistake, and they would might have just skipped through it or something like that. I do definitely recommend that. Because I've heard of problems, like big problems that people have had, where they basically didn't do that and they felt like they lost out on a fair amount of money, especially for students. So it's always worth doing that.
And also all the sorry, really quickly, all the extra quarter hours add up. Trust me, I worked in pubs for years, and if I worked till 8:15, well, it was more like 12:15, but if I worked till 12:15 and I was rated on till 12, I'd add on that 0.25 because it adds up. So anyone listening who's like, nah, it's fine, it's only £3 or whatever, no, add it on, it adds up. Like, there's so many people these days who try and be polite and just think about the money. It's not all about the money, but with an employer in a work situation, that's why you're doing it. Like, you're there to earn money.
I think it's because and again, another reason why I wanted to get you on is, and why this is so heavily money related, is because money has become such a taboo topic.
Yeah.
Because we're often told, oh, we should support local businesses and local businesses struggle, or we should be this and that. And obviously that's true. You should support local businesses, but ultimately you are there to work and you deserve to get paid. And if you're not getting paid, you can get paid somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the final question sort of on taxes is again, another phrase that is quite common is tax year, right? Because it's not the same as the calendar year.
No.
Why is that?
So a tax year runs from 6th of April until 5th of April. I don't know why, and I'm definitely going to Google it after this. But yeah, a tax year or a financial year, that's when it runs. So it runs from April to April. And actually, you might find as you get different jobs, your holiday might run from tax year through the tax year instead of from January to December. Obviously, that's how most people get paid. Bonuses, APRs, so like pay rises you might get in April. So there's lots of stuff that people will find as you sort of go through different companies and have different employers. They will do things differently, and a lot of people will do it through the tax year. But yeah, I don't know why it's from April. I'm gonna Google
I don't
that.
get it. Again, why couldn't they just make it
I know.
December? It's genuinely not hard, and they just make it harder. But to be fair, right?
Yeah.
You know how I'm complaining, right? It is so much worse in America.
Really?
Yeah, like that. Have you ever looked at the American like tax system and how they've because they've got to fill in what are they called? Is it called tax? Is it rebates or tax claims or something like that every year? So they've got to get all their expenses and then basically make sure that they've been taxed properly and whether they need to get a rebate. It is ridiculous. And
so you're basically managing your own taxes.
You manage your own taxes, and you've got to make sure. And so there's companies out there that essentially you can pay for them to look at it, but then those companies are dodgy because they take a hefty sum for that. So essentially, you might as well just not bother. You might as well just do it yourself. But then it takes
God.
So Americans lose out so much money every year because basically it's purposefully made stressful so that obviously the government get to keep more of the money. Because if it was proper, then it would be fine. And anything financial, America are awful at. Absolutely awful. So
I know I'm that.
But it is horrible.
We've got it easier.
We've got it a lot easier. Because when I started looking up how America's taxes work, I thought, wait, so they've got to fill in this form every year and make sure and count every single thing that they've spent. Basically, it's like everyone's an entrepreneur, but even worse because it's pretty much everything rather than just business expenses.
That is literally, that's like being self-employed and doing your self-assessment where you have to go through all of your expenses, add them up, and you go through everything you've earned, and then you take your expenses away. And so it's basically like they're all self-employed if they're all having to do that.
It is the worst thing, and apparently it can take you hours because because they get all their receipts together. And they basically just try and work it out, which is crazy.
I've got that to look forward to now because I've registered self-employed for my freelance work. So I've already got my folder with my receipts in it. I'm about to do a spreadsheet after I come off of this. I'm getting organized because I'm like, I don't want to be there in January 2023 doing my self-assessment and being like, oh, where's that receipt? Where's this? Where's that? Yeah.
I've heard
all of that to look forward to.
It was on TikTok. It was for business, it was for self-employed people. And what they did was they had a day-to-day diary, day-to-page diary, and every single receipt they'd put on the inside, they'd staple inside that day.
That's a great shout. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just writing it down now on my list.
See, we can maybe I'm the expert here. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe I need to get on TikTok.
Do you know? Have you not actually got it? You should get it.
You know what?
For Grown-Ups Club, that would be perfect.
I do, but I create so much content for so many different channels. I get confused. And the other thing is, my friend Jessie, she always sends me TikToks, like funny ones, and my friend Laura as well. And I click on it, and then suddenly I look at the time and I've spent like 45 minutes on TikTok, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? It consumes you. It's the scrolling and everything. So I do have it, but I rarely go on it. But I feel like I do need to look at more of the business side of it for sure.
There's a huge sort of like basically TikTok financial advisors almost. They're not actual advisors, but as in
Yeah.
they give you sort of tips. And I remember I saw that and I thought that's such a good idea. Even for like
Yeah.
your for sort of even if you're not self-employed, for someone that wants to track their finances, it's such a good
Yeah.
idea.
And
But
I think more and more people nowadays are interested in tracking their finances and managing that. I've certainly found when I look through the insights on my Instagram posts that the posts that do the best are the house buying ones and anything to do with finances.
yeah,
Because I think we've all got to this stage where we're like, oh my God, like I want to manage this. I'm spending so much money, or I earn this amount, but I've only saved this amount, and people want to be in control more. And I think that's great that everyone's sort of got to
it
that
is.
point now.
Yeah, I started to write down all my expenses, and I was there like, no wonder why my bank account ain't growing, because I keep spending this money on Greg's. That makes so much more sense. Like at the end of
Yeah.
the week, I do a total of it all, and I'm like,
Yeah.
when did I spend £100 this week?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I spent it on that. Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And
So
it all
you do,
adds up.
yeah.
It all adds up. I've noticed that since the pubs have opened. I mean, I'm doing very well. I'm not really going there, to be honest, but the amount of money on Monzo, my eating out category, has gone up so much. And I'm like, God, that was a category that I barely spent anything in for the last, year, apart from takeaways. And now suddenly I'm going for one meal at the pub and it's costing me 40 quid. Like, it's nuts. It's
Crazy.
mental.
It's crazy. So I feel like we should definitely do a part two, because I don't want this to be too long. I definitely feel like we should do
Yeah.
a part two for this. But
Yeah.
and I feel like this part one can be more, or could be more sort of, I guess, pay related or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't know what I'd call it. And then the second one can be things like saving money, investing, LinkedIn, basically the other ones that you sort of talk. We'll see what the
Yeah.
feedback is. If people really
Yeah.
like it, we'll definitely do another one. So my final one for the this part, I guess, because we've only got 8 minutes and I don't want to keep you too long. I want you to get on that spreadsheet and do that receipt thing.
You're like my motivator.
Exactly. Is this so you mentioned APR a few minutes ago. Bank rates, okay. I do not understand bank rates at all. Like, what does APR mean? Yeah, it's
Right.
annual
So
is it? I don't know.
So APR, when I said it just then, just to make things even more confusing.
I
So
knew
the
it.
APR I said then was for annual, it's not annual pay review, it's like appraisal. It's basically to determine your pay rise.
Right.
But this APR is for because we've all got to have different meanings for all of this stuff. This APR is annual percentage rate. So it's basically, in layman's terms, it's how much it costs you to borrow money. It's the cost of borrowing, basically. So you'd have that with like mortgages. You'd have it with a loan from the bank. I think you'd have it with financing a car. It's just the cost of borrowing money. So any loan you take out, basically, there will be APR, which is the percentage of like interest that you pay.
So if it said something like 1.5% APR, is that 1.5% interest on top of what it is?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what you're paying. So for example, our mortgage is, just to make things even more confusing again, you can have fixed and variable rates. So for example, with a mortgage, we went for a 2-year fixed, which basically means we pay the same amount of interest every single month for those 2 years. But you could go for variable, but then that means you don't know how much interest you're going to be paying each month. It could go up, it could go down.
What does that depend on?
Just like the market, in just general interest rates, the economy, that sort of thing. I don't think it ever fluctuates too much, but just because we wanted to know exactly how much we were paying every single month, we went for a 2-year fixed. And then this year I remortgaged and went for a 3-year fixed, because I don't think they do 2-year fixed now. Things change all the time, but I get confused. I remember I put on my Instagram stories like a few months ago when I was doing it. I had quite a lot of people messaging me because I'd done like my first talking stories on the account. And people were like, oh my God, Katie, you're so grown up and all of this stuff. And I put on my stories, I was like, guys, I'm trying to remortgage right now. I have not got a clue what I'm doing, because as much as people will say, oh yeah, Katie knows what she's doing and all of this stuff, a lot of the time I don't, and I wing it and I Google. Like, I've just got to be honest. Like, it's only because I'm interested in it, and I think there's room for, you know, something like the grown-ups club, where to help people, because I know that's what I needed when I bought a house. So I really don't know everything. I know I do try hard a lot, but yeah, going back to APRs, it's basically the interest you are charged to borrow money. That's basically what it is.
Okay, so I mean, we've only got 4 minutes until the Zoom call left, but you mentioned remortgaging, because I was going to actually ask about that. What does it mean to remortgage, and why do people remortgage?
So there are normally a few reasons why people remortgage. Ours was technically remortgaging, but all it was that our 2-year fix had run out. So it was basically me calling Halifax saying, what deals have you got? Where do we stand? And us moving on to another product, which is what they're called. But that counted as remortgaging. Another people might remortgage is to free up some money, some equity. So for example, if someone, I mean, it would probably be more sort of like our parents' age or younger, who'd say, oh, we want to extend the house, but we haven't got as much money to do it. They might remortgage to take some money out of the house, which they will then have to pay sort of, it will be added onto the mortgage, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's sort of just playing money around. Or really, really quickly, if you have shared ownership and you staircase, which is where you buy more shares. So say you bought 30% of the property, and then you saved up the money to buy another 10%. When you buy that 10%, you have to remortgage the house, because you have to say, excuse me, Halifax, Nationwide, whoever, can we add this to our mortgage? There's so much, like, it's just nuts. We could talk about it forever, really.
Yeah, no, and this is what we definitely do need to do a part 2 on all this. We'll probably be doing part 10s at this rate, because of how much it is. And then by the time we get to part 11, they'll probably have changed everything so much.
Yeah,
we'll have to do
yeah,
it all
and
again.
you have to do it all again. Yeah,
yeah. That's the thing you mentioned earlier on. Like, yes, you could ask your parents, but it was so long ago that they did it.
Yeah,
that things have changed. The way things are done, it's all done online and all that sort of stuff. And that's why, like I said at the beginning, the grown-ups club thing, it is something that's sort of growing more and more. You are seeing it on TikTok. People are learning more about finance on TikTok than they have ever done at home or
in school,
which can be bad. So don't take financial advice from them, but you can learn some really interesting things where you go, you know what, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah,
I started investing not in specific stocks that they were talking about, but just the idea of investing. I started about a year ago, and it's such a good decision, because I'm not making loads of money. Obviously, I'm a student, but it's the fact that I've got that there, and I know I'm going to consistently do that.
And it's just having that mentality.
Getting into that mindset.
Yeah, totally.
But it's been a real pleasure, Katie. I've really enjoyed having you on. I've learned so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Apart from the little crash.
Yeah, my bloody internet. I can't believe that happened.
You know what? You know what I'm disappointed about? The internet crashed, but we didn't see Pepper again.
Oh yeah, where is she? Pepper, come here. Come here.
I thought she was gonna come up, but she hasn't come up.
Oh, she's been sleeping. Here she is.
I think she just hates finance as well. She's like,
yeah,
it just isn't for me.
You don't like it, do you? Or insurance, pet insurance. That's always fun to sort out.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's a lot as well.
Yeah, Christ.
I mean, there's just too much stuff, too much money being spent. But yeah, definitely. Hopefully, next time we can talk about things like saving money, investing. LinkedIn was a big one. And just anything else sort of that people want to hear about. But yeah, like I said, thank you very much, Katie. I'll leave your Grown Ups Club and your personal Instagram on my description box as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we do a part 2 very soon.
Yes, definitely.
And that is it for this week's episode of the podcast. If you didn't learn anything from this week's episode, then I don't know, what you can learn, because this episode definitely taught me a lot. It's crazy how we're not taught these things in school. Is it really school's fault? Not really. I would probably argue it's maybe a bit of the higher ups' fault. I'd also probably argue these are some of the things that we should probably be taught at home. But hopefully now we know them. I would definitely save this podcast. I made a lot. I actually watched this. I should have probably mentioned it at the beginning to make some notes, maybe by whilst watching it, because it will be helpful in the future. So maybe save it somewhere or don't. In fact, I am going to be uploading some clips of this podcast with some of the sort of important bits and bobs, some of the key points that Katy made, just so there'll be shorter videos that you can just easily access. But anyway, if you did enjoy this episode, then make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you share it with your friends. This is an episode that you have to share, right? If you don't share this episode, then I don't know what you're doing. Share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with anyone who's thinking about buying a house, share it with someone that isn't even thinking about buying a house. They just look at houses on Rightmove in ICT, because let's be honest, that's what we do, because it's fun, and show them the huge and long process, but yet slightly simple process of buying a house. But yeah, if you did enjoy it, like I said, please do like the video, share it, and tag us on Instagram at MMHY podcast. Let me know what you learned in the comments below. I want to see a lot of comments. And subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode of the Me, Myself, and Hopefully You podcast. Make sure you check out Katy on all the links below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week. Until next time.